I know there are a lot of guys around the world who still make video games for retro consoles. Dreamcast, Mega Drive, NES, you name it. We even had a dedicated Russian games for the NES episode on RVGC earlier. In this episode, among all the others, I mentioned the Russian PSCD company. The guys who are making ports of modern indie games for NES and Sega Genesis. And you know what? They contacted me and told me that they want me to have a set of their video games for Sega Genesis on real cartridges. And what kind of a video game collector am I to decline such an offer, right? And I not only didn't, I played all of them. Not till the end, to be honest though, but for enough time to make my mind on each of the games I got. And as all of these are not only modern games for the retro consoles, but modern games made in Russia, I decided that I have no other choice but to make an RVGC episode on them.
Hello YouTube, my name is Victor and you're watching the Russian Video Game Comrade show.
As the games I've got are physical, I thought that I can't just capture the footage for the episode on emulator. Capturing it on the original Genesis also wasn't an option, as I don't have a retroscaler.
Guys from RetroThink, if you're watching this, I'd really like to have one.
But I have a friend who owns an analog Mega SG, so I've asked him both to help with the capturing and to have some fun throwing an old-school gaming night. So we did! And today all the game footage will be both crystal clear and accurate, captured on a real console instead of an emulator. Neat! Let's check out the packaging and the cartridges themselves before we start to check out the games. These are well-made quality products. Package includes the cartridge, game manual, and sometimes bonus stickers. Even the screws look authentic, like the ones on the official Sega cartridges. These are not cheap Chinese replicas that are sold a lot on eBay nowadays. My copy of Hunter Girls also has Green Ghost's The PSCD CEO autograph. I made him sign it to place the cartridge next to my Kojima-san's signed Metal Gear Solid. I'm really glad to have this in my collection. Thank you once more, Green Ghost.
What's with the games? Let's check it out.
Let's start with the most recent release, Hunter Girls. Hunter Girls is a port of the game of the same name, released on PC in 2021 by developer Denis Lutsenko. The game is a 2D runner in which you need to control 3 adventurer ladies. To speak about the runner genre, I only played Subway Surfers and Mobile Mario Runner, so I could be wrong. But it still seems to me that Hunter Girls is different from the usual representatives of the genre, which is undoubtedly associated primarily with mobile phones. Although, if you think about it, the same Antarctic adventures from Konami, released for example on MSX and Famicom, is essentially a runner too. So it's probably unfair to say that runners themselves are exclusively mobile time killers that appeared only in the 21st century. Hunter Girls also differs from mobile runners in terms of gameplay. Here you will have to do more actions than just selecting between turning left or right and jumping or ducking. Our female Lost Vikings team will always run for their life throughout the entire game and won't even stop for a moment. Well, except in cutscenes. The cutscenes, by the way, which are represented with static art here, are not only no worse than in the PC version, but even better than in the PC original. This is how it looks like on a computer. And this is how it looks like in the Sega version. And keep in mind that on a PC you can draw anything you want, but on Sega you still need to fit into technical limitations. And if the game itself may seem, and in fact it is, let's say, a little weak graphically, well, in the sense that Mega Drive can produce a much better picture than in this game, the artwork in the cutscenes, in my opinion, is a real masterpiece. So we have a lady wielding a sword and shield, an archer and a magician in our team. All of them are controlled simultaneously from one gamepad. If desired, you can distribute the actions between 2 people and either help or hinder each other in a co-op. My friend and I tried it, and it's a really fun experience. Each level is a short section of a running distance, containing hills, lowlands, and gaps. A variety of enemies are placed across all of these. Some of them have to be shot from afar with an arrow, others have to be cut down with a sword on approach. Some of them can be defeated only with magic, some are invincible, and the only way to pass them is to jump over. The arrangement of all these obstacles at each level is thought out and predetermined, and the further into the game, the more dense. The game is quite challenging, so don't expect to instantly play it through on the first try. This is not some ghosts and goblins for sure, but the difficulty level seems quite old school and I really like it. In general, I admit, when I heard the word runner, I thought that Hunter Girls would not be anything more or less interesting, and I was very much mistaken. Yes, the game is far from a masterpiece and it can't compete with Mega Drive's AAA projects from the 90s, but at the same time it's really fun to play, and when playing cooperative it's also quite crazy. It's a shame that out of the entire set today, it's the only one that can be played in the multiplayer mode.
There are both action and puzzle games on the cards I've got. Let's check a puzzle one now. Alien Cat 2.
The original Alien Cat 2 was released on PC in 2020, and the guys from PSCD made a total of 4 conversions of it. For the NES, SNES, Master System, and Sega Genesis. Alien Cat's gameplay is somewhat similar to the games Binary Land and Binary City I told about in the Russian NES games episode. The only difference is, here, instead of the penguins and tanks, we've got cats. We have a gameplay screen with items scattered across it. Our cat has to collect them to complete the level. In addition to useful items, the screen is also filled with nasty things, spikes and mines. Just like in Binary Land, you need to control 2 characters at once, and therefore simply piercing the levels will not work, because each of your actions must be thought out and synchronized. Otherwise, while one cat will get the bonus, the second one will get a stray bullet. Not a bullet, obviously, but you get the idea, right? Of the entire set I received, Alien Cat 2 is perhaps the most plain game. The idea of the game seems to be just fine, but in the form in which it is presented here, I personally quickly got tired of it. The implementation of the same mechanics in Binary City, in my opinion, is much more creative and fun.
Next one is Foxyland. And as I know, this was the first game guys from PSCD have ported to Sega Genesis.
Foxyland is a platformer made by Bug Studio, originally released for the PC in 2017. The plot is familiar to anyone who played any 8 or 16-bit game as a kid. The protagonist was having a good time along with his girlfriend, and then, out of the blue, bang! Well, it's time to save your beloved one, hoping that she won't end up in a different castle every time we will get to one. A song as old as time itself. 36 levels, in each of which you will need to find a certain number of crystals to advance, and along the way you can, but it is no longer necessary, collect cherries, a sufficient number of which will open the lock on the chest. If you open one, you will get an extra life. Explore. Look for levers to open hidden areas, dodge all sorts of spikes and creepy things, and so on. We know it all. The game is quite good looking, but also, as in the case of the previous Alien Cat, quite standard. Yes, I didn't play it all through. I spent an hour or so in it. And usually this amount of time is enough for me to decide whether I want to finish the game or not. And in this case, I am not sure I will. Yes, it looks nice visually. It is directly reminiscent of 16-bit platformers of the 90s. Cool spot, Zero Kamikaze Squirrel, and so on. But at the same time, it does not stand out as anything really original. Probably, if you haven't played anything 16-bit arcade style for a long time, and you just want a standard platformer, this is it. You can play and have fun. And for sure, if Foxyland had been released in the 90s and sold on the cartridges back then, it would have been played and enjoyed along with all the other Genesis platformers. But today, I really want to see something more than just standard and good. I want the new retro game to be somehow unique. I need to know why I need to spend my time playing it and not something else. And sometimes this may not be something specific, such as astonishing graphics or some outstanding plot. Hunter Girls, for example, did this. Hunter Girls made me want to play it regardless of the fact that it is also quite simple gameplay-wise. Well, in general, if you consider that Foxyland, I repeat, is the first full-fledged port made by the guys from PSCD, well, I'm kind of a little blown away by how high quality it is. Once again, this is the studio's very first work, and it immediately looks cool and plays comfortably. How many developers can boast that their first pancake, no matter retro or modern, didn't turn out lumpy? I'm sure not even a dozen.
Let's take a look at another puzzle game next.
Remember there was a popular mobile game 2048 in the mid-2000s? The one where you had to stack cubes with the same number and collect them into as large a number as possible so that you could later collect them into even larger ones? So Bone Marrow from Huge Pixel, released in 2020 for PC, took this mechanic as a basis, changed the numbers for swords, shields, and food, added a character who moved around the field along with the above-mentioned items and the ability to absorb stacked items at a certain point in the game by this character and enemies. And PSCD Games transferred the game to the Genesis almost identically. There's a small con on the box here. It states that the game can be played by 2 people, although in fact the Genesis version is single player only. Green Ghost told me that they plan to implement multiplayer as well. They printed covers for this purpose, but multiplayer mode was excluded from the final version. With the exception of this small con, the Sega version looks almost a twin to the PC version. The game has several playable characters. To be honest, I still don't understand how they differ. A set of different levels and
too long and monotonous gameplay.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Bone Marrow is a bad game. 2048 was very addictive, and if you like these kind of puzzle games, you will probably like the expanded version as well. It's just that, in my opinion, a game like this had to be simple to stay addictive. And all these power-ups, battles with enemies, and so on, make it too complicated to instantly dive into it, like you did in 2048. Moreover, first of all, it is not clear why even the first level is so boring and long. Well, just so you understand, how long did one game session take in 2048? 3 to 5 minutes? And that was the catch. A simple short session game, which is very easy to instantly start playing and understand, but really tough to master it. And in Bone Marrow, well, the only first level took 20 to 30 minutes to complete. And the most confusing part. Even after completing it, I didn't really get how all the mechanics in the game work. By the 10th minute, I was already very tired of the game. Almost all appearing enemies were killed literally with 1 or 2 clicks, and the need to accurately think through moves in order to collect the largest possible number on an object was essentially absent. And guess what? The game does not end if the field is completely filled like it did in 2048. And in fact, at least throughout level 1, the game can be very easily scammed by filling the field and then devouring items. It may not be possible to do this at later levels, but the first one was so long and boring that, to be honest, I wasn't even interested in checking even the second one. In general, the idea is not bad. The implementation of the port on Sega Genesis is excellent. Just imagine, PSCD put digitized speech on the cartridge in the opening cinematics. At this moment, I was simply stunned.
780 год. Мир больше не будет прежним.
But the game itself didn't interest me enough to return to it. And at the same time, I have no doubt there will be people who will be very interested in such a reimagine of a famous puzzle game.
But the next one I'm gonna tell you about did.
The Debtor, originally released by Shargame for PC in 2018, looks much less sophisticated than Bone Marrow at the first glance. It doesn't have fancy graphics or digitized speech, it doesn't have complicated gameplay mechanics either. But it's really a game that I was amused by, despite the fact it can be considered player-unfriendly in 2024. Technically, there is nothing complicated in Debtor. We have a character who can move some objects with his shoulder, break some with his head, or with a bomb. And in order to complete a level, you just need to collect all the coins on it and get to the exit door. We secure a path for ourselves, trying not to screw up anything on the way, and we really can if we are not attentive enough and progressively move towards the goal. Looks quite simple, right? And yes, it is, if you're playing the PC version of the game, and the footage on the screen now is exactly from the PC version. Here you can always see the entire or almost the entire level all the time.
And when I said player-unfriendly, I was talking about the Genesis version of it.
In the Genesis version, the visible playing area is limited to a tiny piece of the level around your character. And keeping in mind the fact that almost every action can lead to a soft lock on the level, this really becomes critical for the player. Did you drop the platform in the wrong place? Oh, you didn't drop it at all when it was necessary? Okay, it's fine. Just start the level from the beginning. And yes, I almost forgot. You will have only 3 lives, my friend. Not for one level, no. For the set of levels you need to complete to get a password. What? You're asking me how much is a set? Well, 10. You need to complete 10 levels with 3 lives to get a password. All of these levels will be challenging, yes, with a single mistake leading to starting the level over. So you can immediately prepare, like the good old days, to replay the levels so many times until you memorize the sequence of actions in them simply to the point of automatism. Good luck with that! But if your nerves are not very good, then perhaps you should better be off. Playing some Dark Souls, maybe?
The last but not least game for today is Thunderpaw.
Thunderpaw was released for PC in 2019, and now we also have a Sega Genesis conversion. And to be honest, this is exactly the game you expect to see on a 16-bit console. Yes, visually, it certainly can't compete with such masterpieces like, for instance, Comix Zone, but it looks, and most importantly, it plays really well. It somehow reminds me of a classic 90s platformer, Jazz Jackrabbit. Yes, I understand that Jazz is a PC, not a console game, and there were differences in PC and console platformers back in the day. But I chose this exact comparison for a reason. Thing is, Thunderpaw is exactly the kind of platformer they made for MS-DOS in the 90s, trying to compete with Nintendo and Sega's platformers from that time. It has some 90s PC vibe you will instantly feel if you were more a PC gamer in the 90s like myself. A crazy, or should I say bonkers plot? Check. Anthropomorphic animals with guns? Check. Furious bosses that will make you want to rage quit the game at first, but then calm down, overcome yourself, and beat the bastard? Check. Ah, and yes, fans of Castlevania will also find their childhood trauma here, as...
Не, ну это вот это прям это просто полнейшее свинство, реально полнейшее свинство. Последняя жизнь. Так, последняя. Да идите в жопу!
Офигеть!
Не, ну это прям это просто это что вообще?
The games I showed today are not a complete set of what the guys from PSCD do. I've already shown some things in my videos before, and maybe I'll show some more later. Oh, by the way, have you seen that great-looking Resident Evil 1 Genesis remake on the internet? Well, this is also PSCD's project. As I know its release is due this year, and I really hope I'll get a chance to review it someday on the Russian video game Comrade show.
After all, this is also a game made by Russian guys, right?
Summing up the things shown in today's episode, I want to say this one more time. Every time I come across such amazing retro things that real enthusiasts continue to work on in the 21st century, I am simply indescribably delighted. And when I also get cartridges with such things in my hands, I simply cannot just take a quick look on them and just put them away on the far side of my video game shelf. This is kind of a thing I'm in a need to share with other retro gaming fans, and it doesn't really matter whether I like them a lot or not so much personally. Even if I think something is boring, it doesn't necessarily mean some other person won't like the game either. It's just a matter of each person's preference. And the level of work done on each of the projects I showed today is simply astonishing. This is such a cool thing that in the era of 3D AAA projects for top-end hardware, there is still someone who wants to prolong the life of something that turned our world upside down in our childhood. NES, Sega Genesis, SNES. That is just amazing. I'm trying to make more videos for the Russian Video Game Comrade show now, guys. If you like the show and want to see new episodes more often, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Let's make it this way. If we achieve only a $101 monthly patronage, I'll promise to release a new episode every month. How does it sound? The link to the Patreon page and to the other social networks are in the description. If you like weird Soviet and Russian stuff, follow me on Twitter. I post it a lot there. Well, I think that's it for today.
Thank you for watching today's episode. I really hope you liked it. Please press thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Have a nice day, good luck!